Welcome to Monkey Knife Fight Live. Folks, I'm Conner Rowntree, and today I'm joined by Noor Zainab and Nick Whalen. We're talking Game 6 of the NBA Finals. It goes till night. Milwaukee has a chance to close out the Suns on home court and win their first title since 1971. With Giannis, he would be the youngest player. He'd be younger than Shaq, KD, Jordan, and LeBron to win his first title. Nick, can they get it done tonight on home court?
Man, I hope they get it done. Knowing the entire history of Wisconsin sports, with the exception of the 2010-11 Green Bay Packers, I fully expect some sort of disaster to occur. I don't know what that disaster will be. That would create, an extremely tense Game 7 back in Phoenix on Thursday. People in Milwaukee are surprisingly confident. I'll say not overconfident. Everybody knows better than that, but there hasn't been as much panic as I thought. There hasn't been as much negativity as I thought. People are pretty confident that the Bucks can close this out at home. I'm surprised by that. I think Game 5 changed the minds of a lot of people because and I myself have been harping all playoffs that this Milwaukee team is not resilient. They're kind of a front-running team. When things go well, they go really well. When things don't go well, they kind of turtle up. But they went down 17 points in the first half of Game 5. And I actually happened to be at a wedding reception during that time. So I walked away for a little bit, did my duties, came back, all of a sudden they're up 5 points. And, they were the team that finally is playing from ahead in the second half, because this entire series, with the exception of Game 3, it's felt like they're always like somewhere between 5 to 10 points down. And they've kind of needed some miracle plays and some miracle sequences at the end of their victories to get to the position that they are right now. And that even happened, the other night in Game 5 with Jrue Holiday getting that strip, throwing the riskiest alley-oop of all time. Giannis missing 4 clutch free throws late in that game, and the Bucks still winning. I think it felt like Milwaukee, obviously they shot the ball well in that game, but Phoenix shot it even better. And the fact that both teams kind of played their best game and Milwaukee still won, I think has instilled a sense of confidence in people who root for the Milwaukee Bucks. With that said, I mean, it's an NBA Finals game. It hasn't really mattered where these games are played. I mean, Milwaukee just won in Phoenix a couple nights ago. It's not like the Suns aren't capable of winning in Milwaukee. Most finals games to me are basically a 50-50 toss-up. I think we've seen throughout the course of these first 5 games that these teams are very evenly matched. I wouldn't be surprised by any result tonight. All I'm confident in is that we get a very close game. I think I would pick Phoenix to cover the 4.5-point spread as it sits right now. I just can't confidently say who wins. I mean, if we're giving the slight edge to the home team, probably Milwaukee, but I don't think we see a comfortable victory by either team.
Well, as for Game 5, it seems that the Suns just forgot there was a game to play after the first quarter. No one knows that backcourt like you. So what happened to the Suns in Game 3 to 5?
Why are you laughing, Jason? I think explain yourself. I think you can blame Chris Paul. He's gotten a lot of the heat. You can blame the lack of touches that DeAndre Ayton has been getting. I think we've been seeing a lack of just none of the role players or anybody else aside from Devin Booker really showing up for the Suns. But that's kind of when you have to give the Bucks defense some credit. They've done a really, really good job on the backcourt of the Phoenix Suns with the combination of Chris Middleton, PJ Tucker, and Jrue Holiday. They've made sure that they've made Chris Paul's life particularly hard. He's not able to get the looks that he wants to. He's not able to open the lanes the way that he wants to. And you got to give Bud credit for that. He's figured out how to adjust, and he's figured out how to make the life for the Phoenix Suns offense really hard. And at this point, what they're doing is just making sure that Devin Booker takes his shots and everybody else just kinds of, figures out what they got to do. But if you just rely on Devin Booker to win against Giannis is the best player on the court. It's not going to happen. So it's been difficult to see how the Suns haven't really been able to turn it around, especially after winning the first 2 games. And as for tonight, just going off of what Nick said, I think it's difficult to say who's going to win. I think I'm going to be inclined to go with the Bucks just because they do have the best player on the court, and they're going to be looking to make sure that they close out in Game 6 at home with the crowd. I know it's not really the most analytical thing to say that it's a home crowd, but each team for this one, especially the Bucks, they've won every game at home, and they've also taken the game in Phoenix. So I think it looks pretty well for the Bucks. If we do see a change in pace for the Suns, it's going to have to come from Chris Paul. He's going to have to make sure that he's a lot more reserved. We haven't even seen the Chris Paul that we really know, right? He's been I don't even want to say that it hasn't been him, but he hasn't been making the same plays that Chris Paul makes. He's almost kind of, when you see him on the court, he almost kind of looks flustered. Like he's in his head the whole time, doesn't really know which way he wants the ball to go around and which way he wants to serve his teammates. He just looks like he makes the worst plays, and it ends up turning in a turnover pretty much. And that's been the discussion of the playoffs the finals for Chris Paul, just because he's been averaging almost 4 turnovers per game. So for them to turn this around tonight, it's going to have to be a massive game for Chris Paul for him to completely turn around the way that he's approached the series so far. And just to make sure that somehow Ayton gets more touches, because once Ayton gets going in the first half, it opens the lanes up for everybody else. And he's the biggest guy on the court for the Suns, so they need to start feeding him and make sure that he's putting his numbers on the floor.
Now, Noor, one big takeaway from something that you just said. You just said crowd, not audience.
No, I didn't.
You said crowd. You did say crowd there.
Everyone's nodding their head. I don't think.
Really
and the people have spoken on Twitter. Can a crowd also be called an audience? Now, before we went on air, Nick had a couple things to say. And we will be doing this poll again, but for the first take of the poll, can a crowd also be called an audience with that specific wording? Noor, 90.9% to 9.1%. We're going to let the defense speak first. Nick, we'll let you explain the wording side of things and why we're going to do this poll again.
I'm starting to think this was maybe part of that Chinese data hack that's been in the news this week, because that's really the only thing that makes sense for it to be this slanted. Obviously the wording, it doesn't really do it justice. I think in general, a crowd can be called an audience, just talking like just a general crowd, but I'm talking specifically about an NBA crowd or even a sports crowd. You would just never, who are the 9 out of 10 people who are saying like, oh yeah, I was at, we'll go to Canada. I was at is it still the Sky Dome in Toronto? What is it called?
Rogers Center now.
Rogers Center. I was at Rogers Center. I was in the audience for the Blue Jays game. Like, nobody would say that. Nobody would ever say that. I would never say I was in the audience for the Packers Seahawks game, or I'm going to be in the audience for Bucks Suns tonight. Like, no, who would ever say that?
See, now that you just said an audience about a Blue Jays crowd, I feel why it hurts so much when she called the Bucks crowd an audience. Now I feel the pain.
It's not even about her saying they were quiet. It's just the misuse. Like, I'm much more offended by the use of audience over crowd.
All right, Noor. Well, people clearly agreed with you. So
I
have
nothing to add except 90% of people agreed with me. And if you guys want to rephrase the sentence as much as you want, keep it going every single day, that's fine. I'll promote it myself and I will present your arguments myself.
I think one thing that should be noted, though, is that you did say crowd during your
you're lying. I think you're making stuff up, Conner.
I think that's going to be clipped. I think that's going to be clipped later, but you both mentioned Giannis.
Find me the receipt.
We'll check the tape.
Oh, we're going to go back. Jason is all over it. But you both mentioned Giannis and his play as of late. It's been absolutely outstanding, averaging over 32 points per game in the finals. His line on Monkey Knife Fight, the Monkey Knife Fighters on the back end are doing a great job. 32.5 going into this game. Nick, does Giannis go for more or less in Game 6?
I think he goes for more. He went under, I believe, in Game 4. Was exactly at 32 points in Game 5, and like I mentioned, missed 4 clutch free throws, missed 7 free throws overall in that game. Hits one of those, and several of them were rolling around on the rim and went out. Then he goes over. He has 2, 40 plus point games in this series already. I think it comes so easy for Giannis. Devin Booker is coming off of back-to-back 40-point games himself, but for me, there's a lot more reason to think that he's due for some regression. Anybody who's watching these games, you can see how Devin Booker's getting to 40. It's like ridiculous fading step back contested 2-pointer after ridiculous fading step back contested 2-pointer. And they've been going down, to his credit. He's been insane, but at some point, he's not going to keep shooting like 80% on those shots. Whereas with Giannis, it doesn't really feel like he's played like crazy well these last 2 games. I mean, he's had some big moments at the end of those games, but it's not one of those games where you're like, man, he dominated that game start to finish. It's been more, okay, there's 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Giannis feels like he's been kind of quiet. Oh, wait, he has 27 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, a block, and a steal. He just kind of cruises his way to these big scoring games. And I think in Game 6, he makes a more concerted effort to be aggressive. And, for as bad of a free throw shooter as he's been, I mean, he's basically single-handedly dragged the Bucks under 70% at the line in the series, which is horrendous. I would venture to guess that there haven't been many NBA champions who shoot under 70% as a team at the line and win the finals, but it hasn't deterred him from getting there. And that's been the biggest thing. He's more than happy to go there and miss 2 in a row and then try to make the next 2 a minute later when he gets fouled. So I think he, by a combination of his just kind of being able to cruise to like a minimum of 25 points by, sensing this moment and knowing that he has to be more aggressive, and then, his willingness to get to the line, and he might get there. He might only shoot 50%, but if he's getting there 17 or 18 times, that's still 9 or 10 extra points that you're looking at. So I don't know that he has like a massive 45 and 15 game in him tonight, but I think he could pretty comfortably get to something like 35 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. I mean, it's crazy to say, but that's kind of just been like the standard for him.
Well, so Nick's taking the more there, Noor. I like how that ran. Taking the more there, Noor. How do you see this going?
I'm going to agree with Nick. I think, like we mentioned with Giannis, it's the past couple of games, it's been more so Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton taking their shots and making them as well, to their credit. But like Nick said, even those games when Giannis took a backseat, he cruised his way to 26, 27 points. It's been really, really easy for him. And I think we've established this in this show quite a bit, that what the Suns have going for them against Giannis is they don't have the length to stop him. So for Giannis, like we mentioned so many times, he can eat whenever he wants to. It's just a matter of whether he wants to have that game or not. And I think just given the fact that it's game 6, this could be the last one, and he could take this. This is going to be his time to put the team on his back and get them the ring. I think he's gonna kind of take the team on his back and make sure that he's the main contributor tonight. So
yeah,
I'm
going to agree with both of you. Well, he was gassed in game 5. He's playing an all-around game. He's passing, attacking in the paint, and playing hard defense. He's NBA title on the line. How do you not take more on that? As for Devin Booker, his counterpart, also at 32.5 points on Monkey Knife Fight. Obviously, if the Suns are to stay alive, they're going to need a big performance from their all-star. He's averaging right around 30 points per game. Noor, you're a backcourt genius for the Suns. How do you see this going?
Yeah, don't flatter me like that. Your audience is probably like, no, she's not. But I said audience again. See, did you hear that?
Yeah, because you're referring to people watching a live stream. That's not a crowd.
Oh my God. Anyway, for Booker tonight, I think you know what? Like, I don't think he's gonna have the same 40-point game. I don't think he's gonna have the 40 points back to back. It's like Nick mentioned, he's taking a lot of shots and he's made them, but they have been very much contested. And the fact that they still went in has been great for him, but I'm not sure if that consistency can still keep going tonight, especially in Milwaukee. I think he has the mojo to go over 32. I just don't know if it's going to be anywhere near 40. So I'm going to go just over 32 for Booker, especially because like you mentioned, he's the best player for the Suns, and he understands that he's the one who has to take more shots, and he's going to come through for that. That's where his mentality is going to be.
After that analysis, how do you not call yourself the backcourt expert of the Suns?
Nick, you know what? You might be right.
Team, fun little info, because Nick mentioned before that the last team, like, there's not a lot of teams who have shot under 70% during an NBA Finals. Going back at least 10 years, the only time it happened last was the 2015 Cavs Warriors. The Cavs shot like 702. The Warriors shot like 702, and the Cavs shot like 699.699.
That's surprising.
For the most part, though, it is like very healthily over 75% in almost all of the. Oh, here's another one. 2009, the Orlando Magic shot 69.1% for the free throw line. But it's not often. It's not often over the last like 10, 15 years.
I mean, I would guess, probably don't want to look all the way back, but I would assume that maybe some of those Shaq Lakers teams were under 70, just basically for the same reason that the Bucks are, because one guy is taking like 60% of your attempts and hitting 50% of them.
I have to go back to 2003.
Yeah. 2000.
Yeah, you're right. 69.6%. Were the Pistons, and the Lakers shot 64% from the free throw line.
And they lost that
Nick,
series, right?
You're all over it. Yeah, absolutely all
really
over
good call. It's only happened.
Number crunching genius.
67% the New Jersey Nets that got swept. That's not good.
Well, Nick, what does Devin Booker do in game 6? Monkey Knife Fight, more or less 32.5 points. Talking about all these guys missing shots. This guy hits a lot. How do you see this one going?
Oh man, it's tough. I think he goes slightly over. There's got to be some regression though, right? I mean, unless he's willing to put up 30 plus shots again, which is very much in the cards. It's going to depend on what version of Chris Paul we get. All the people who are saying Chris Paul's injured and want to make that excuse, I don't love that. I mean, he had 21 and 11 in the last game. He played 35 minutes. Like I just don't really see it. I mean, if he is injured, he's still playing pretty well. And if he's like truly injured and people believe he's hurting the team, then he shouldn't be out there. But he seems fine to me. If Devin Booker is going to take 35 shots in a game that the Suns have to win, he probably goes over. I don't think he's going to shoot 50+% from the field again. Like law of averages suggests that he's due for some regression on those extremely difficult mid-rangers, especially that we've been talking about. And, he had a really tough three kind of leaning away that kept the Suns in the game late. Almost every single bucket he's getting, the Bucks are making him work extremely hard for it. And at some point, that's going to pay off for Milwaukee. So, it's just a question of like, does he have to basically be the guy at all times? Because when he's taking 33 shots and Chris Paul's taking only 15, as we saw in Game 5, by default, Booker's a good enough player that even if he's having a semi-off night, he's probably still going to get into the mid-30s just because he does get to the line. He can hit threes. He's just taking that many shots. It's the efficiency doesn't matter when you're talking about this over-under. This, like I said, it just comes down to Chris Paul. I have no idea what version of Chris Paul we're going to get, injured or not. I don't love the narrative that he's going to wilt. I know that he's had some struggles in the past in the postseason. And I know that he's lost the last 12 games that Scott Foster has officiated of his in the playoffs. And Scott Foster will be on the officiating crew tonight. That's just an absolutely insane stat. So that does not bode well for CP. But like I said, for as many shortcomings as he's had, I just have a hard time believing he's going to come out and completely choke tonight. I think we see a closer version of Chris Paul to the one that we saw at the end of that Clippers series, at the end of that the Denver series in round 2, where he really felt like he sensed the moment, really felt like he had turned a corner in terms of reversing that narrative. If the Suns are going to win this game, it's going to take Chris Paul having a big game, being more aggressive. And as a result, I think we would see a little bit of a reduced usage rate for Devin Booker. So that's the argument for the under. With that said, I think he's going to take enough shots and go slightly over. As you can tell, I'm not super confident about this. I don't think we see a third straight 40-point game, but my gut says he comes in somewhere in like the 33 to 36 range.
Yeah, with the season on the line, he's one of, if not their best players. You got to take more on him just for the sake of that.
Right.
Now we're going to have a little bit of fun. Monkey Knife Fight, an 8 for 8, 125 times your buy-in. All you have to do is scroll all the way to the far right once you select the basketball, or you can use the hamburger menu where it says featured, drop down to the more or less, and also scroll all the way to the right and you'll see it. Click it there, and we're going to go through these one at a time. Now, both of our analysts already took more and more on Devin Booker and Giannis. Chris Middleton had a heck of a Game 5. Nick, what do you think Chris Middleton does in Game 6?
He did have a heck of a Game 5. And I think this is a pretty generous line, given how he's played these last 2 games. Then again, we're talking about Chris Middleton, a guy who had 29 combined points in the previous 2 games. So it's very possible that this could go either way. 25.5 though, that's low enough for me to go over. And I know we're now like 3 for 3 on Giannis, Booker, and Middleton all going over. The chances of that happening are not great. But at 25.5, I think it's pretty reasonable. If that number was even like 28.5 or 27.5, I think I'd be a lot more skeptical. But Middleton is in that similar situation as Booker, where Giannis is obviously a big component of the offense. Holiday's a big component of the offense, but of those 3, Middleton's the guy who can kind of pick and choose to shoot whenever he wants. Giannis, it requires some setting up in some sense. He's not just going to pull up for 3 on a fast break. Holiday can kind of go rogue every now and then, but he tends to be a little more careful. Whereas Middleton's the guy that, if he's feeling it and he wants to get 35, he can get 35. So I think this number is set just low enough that I'd feel comfortable going over on Chris Middleton and really helping Milwaukee close this out at home.
Noor, how do you think Middleton performs in Game 6? Does he go for more or less than the 25.5 points?
I get where Nick's coming from in that, he's been coming off such a hot couple games, and he's going to make sure that he goes off of that momentum into this Game 6 at home. But I don't know. I kind of feel like he's going to go under. Not just the fact that it's Chris Middleton and it's just, he goes based off of his mood ring for the day. But I think it's also just because I think the Suns are going to realize that, well, they probably already have that. They can't stop Giannis, right? So what they have to do is make life difficult for the rest of them, which is going to be Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday. And given, yes, Chris Middleton, if he wants to make those shots, he will make the most difficult shots. The same ones that we've seen Devin Booker make the last game and the 2 games before that. If, the most contested, hand in your face kind of shots, you're kind of like, how did Chris Middleton do that? How did that fadeaway go in? And then it goes in. So if he wants to have that big game, he can have it. I'm just going to bank on the Suns trying to make sure that they stop his touches and him getting going in the game. So I'm going to go under 25 for Chris Middleton here. Probably, I would say he's going to get 20 for sure. I just don't know if he's going to go over 25.
Chris Paul, we've talked a lot about him today. There's been a lot of talk about him in the media. 21.5 points on Monkey Knife Fight, needs 22 points to exceed that line. Noor, where do you like the point god coming in, as you call him?
It's his legacy game. He's gonna have to come through. I think the thing with this narrative too, you don't want to make anything narrative based, but I'm thinking that's kind of what's going through the player's head. And if they lose tonight, I think it's going to fall on Chris Paul, right? Especially after that game 4 turnover towards the very end. If he had not committed that, I think this would be a different conversation we're having right now. So for him, I think he realizes he has to come through, and he has to come through strong. Not only does it have to be through passing, the stuff that CP usually does, but he has to make his impact scoring wise. And he cannot afford to take those ill-advised shots as well as those ill-advised passes that turn into turnovers. I think he realizes that this is going to be his legacy game. This is going to be one of his last shots at getting a title, let alone a finals game. And he's just going to come out guns blazing. I'm not sure if he's going to go over 25 points, but I'm going to go over 21 points for Chris Paul.
Nick, how do you think Chris Paul performs in Milwaukee in front of a hostile crowd? Audience. Doesn't make a difference.
It does make a difference.
It says audience expert. Nor is the audience expert.
For what it's worth, my username one is this has commented in our MKF live chat and said there's a good crowd here today, just for what it's worth.
Oh,
it's an audience.
I don't know if that helps.
If you're watching us as an audience.
Yeah. I don't. Maybe.
That's something you can agree on, right, Nick?
Whoa. If that guy's having a good time watching us, you can be our crowd.
You can be whatever you want.
You can be whatever you want. You just keep tuning in and enjoying. Jrue Holiday. Obviously, he's been up and down and all around. 21 points is what he needs to eclipse his line on Monkey Knife Fight. The line's 20.5. Nor, where do you think Jrue Holiday comes in? Chris Paul's opposite.
Oh, Jrue Holiday is so hard to game plan. I think I'm going to go under Jrue Holiday just for the same argument that I had for Chris Middleton, where I think the Suns don't really have anything for Giannis. So what they're going to try to do is make sure they limit anybody else that they can limit, which is going to be Chris Paul and Jrue Middleton. Sorry, not Chris Paul, Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday. So I'm going to say under for Jrue Holiday. And I think like what we've seen before, he's obviously had a great couple shooting games in this series, but that's not really the Jrue Holiday that we've known to see. I can also just see that regressing, just seeing how his consistency kind of usually goes. And he makes sure that his impact is felt on the game assist wise. I'm just not sure if it's going to be impacted in the scoring way tonight.
Nick, how do you think Jrue Holiday plays? He's coming off a 27-point performance. Obviously, his best performance in the finals from a scoring standpoint. Where do you think he comes in?
All right, sorry, I'm on the Wikipedia page for crowd right now. Things are looking my way. I'll just say that. It depends which version of Jrue Holiday we get. Obviously, if it's the Jrue Holiday from games 5 and 6 against Atlanta, when he had really his only true like elite back-to-back games this entire postseason. He's had some one-offs. Obviously, game 5 was one of them where he's been spectacular, but he usually comes crashing back down the following game. Game 5 against Atlanta, 25 points, 13 assists, 6 rebounds. Game 6, 27 points, 9 assists, 9 rebounds. Of course, the caveat there is that Giannis did not play in either of those games. So you're getting a little bit of a different game script. But either way, Holiday showed up big. Can he replicate that tonight? If so, he probably goes over pretty easily. And if so, the Bucks probably win this game pretty easily. But I'm inclined to believe that he regresses a little bit. I mean, if you watch game 5 a lot of the shots he was hitting were really tough. They were the shots that he's basically been missing the entire postseason. So we have a pretty large sample size that suggests he misses those shots more often than not, and a very small sample size of him actually making those shots. I'm inclined to follow the data here. I think he plays well defensively, of course, but that doesn't really help him when you're talking about scoring. I think this is a Giannis and a Middleton game for the Bucks offense. And, if Drew Holiday's able to give you 15 to 20 points on relatively efficient shooting, I think you're more than happy to live with that. But I don't expect to see a game like last game where Drew Holiday was really the point man for the Bucks offensively until the end of that game.
Noor, any final touches on the Drew Holiday? Anything that Nick said there? Anything to touch on the crowd with his Wikipedia search before we move on?
No, I'm just gonna need you guys to send me the link when you send out the new poll. This time
Okay.
I need to have my eye
There
on
could
it
be a
too.
full back read process for it. What's speed
We
round
need
through
a whole
DeAndre?
episode on this discussion, actually.
Well,
if we don't have a game 7, can we have
if there's
that?
no game 7, we could replace it with the crowd versus audience debate. We'll bring in a bunch of guests and some live callers maybe to really weigh in on.
Put that on Monkey Knife. I
DeAndre-
see Nick. I know he's completely on Wikipedia right now. Just look at his face.
He's very into it.
So
DeAndre Ayton.
Connor, if you don't mind, speed round through
Yep.
Ayton, Crowder, and Lopez. You guys can answer them all in one win.
DeAndre Ayton, 20 points last game, 6 points before. Obviously, back and forth. His line is 17.5. Jay Crowder hit some big threes a few games ago, and Brooke Lopez. Where do you two see those guys coming in? Noor, ladies first, DeAndre Ayton, and then run through the other two.
DeAndre Ayton, 16 points, I think for him is generous, just given the fact that he's the biggest man on the court for the Suns, and if he wants to get touches, the Suns want him to get looks, he's able to do that, and he's one who's able to finish those touches as well. I think the game plan for the Suns tonight is gonna be to make sure DeAndre gets those touches. Like I've said, the second you see him go off in the first quarter, it makes life not only easier for him but his teammates as well. So that should be one of the game plans for the Suns, and if that is, then I see him going over 16, no problem. And as far as Jay Crowder is concerned, I'm gonna go over for Jay Crowder for 11 points. I know he's kind of a little bit shaky when it comes to scoring each game, but I'm just going to go based off of the fact that he's the only one who's been in the finals before. He was just in it last year. He understands what this game is going to be all about, what is being asked of him in Milwaukee. And he's his 3 points, it's either going to be 0 of 1 or 6 of 5 of 6. So I'm going to be inclined to go with the 5 of 6 just because it is the game, the final game could be for the Suns. And like I said, he's the only one with experience. So I'm going to say that he's going to go over 11.5. And for Brooke Lopez, I'm going to say he's going to go under 11 just because he's only broke 10 twice this series. And he's also only been averaging about 24 minutes a game. I'm not really sure if he sees anything more than that. If he does, he could see an increase in his points. But if it stays around the same number of minutes he's been playing usually, then I'm going to be inclined to go under for Brooke Lopez.
Switch that to a more, and then you have Noor's picks for the crazy more or less. Nick, how do you see the final three?
I'm going to go under on Ayton, over on Crowder, under on Lopez. I think that's what Noor said, right? Ayton.
I think she went for more on Ayton.
Oh, she did. Okay. So yeah, I know Ayton went over last game. It just feels like he hasn't been all that involved. Like he has to kind of scrap for a lot of his points. A lot of them are alley-oop feeds. He basically has to rely on his teammates to get him those points. And I think Milwaukee's going to sell out to eliminate those easy baskets in this game. I think he has a pretty quiet game 6 while the ball's in the hands of Booker and Paul. Crowder, I just have these visions of the Bucks like going on a run and then Jay Crowder just always having an answer with some like BS like contested 3-pointer that he's been hitting all playoffs. But like Noor said, he's either going to go like 0 for 8 or 7 for 8. It's one of those two outcomes. And in a game like this where I expect the worst for the team that I'm rooting for, I have to go over on Crowder. It just seems like a thorn in the side type of game for him. And I'm going under on Lopez. Similar situation to Ayton, where he's just not that involved. There's been a few times where they've been able to hunt mismatches and Lopez could kind of get his jump hook off or get a drop step off, but that's really only once or twice per game. And like Noor said, they've been limiting his minutes. Bobby Portis played really well at the 5 for stretches in game 5, especially. I think Milwaukee goes to that maybe a little bit earlier tonight. And with Lopez, it's weird to say about a 7-1, like fairly traditional center in terms of his body style, but if he's not hitting threes, he's 2 of 13 from 3 over the last few games. If he's not hitting threes, it's really hard for him to score. And like I said, he'll get a few easy buckets inside. He'll have a few alley-oops, but that's not really enough generally to get you to 12 points So unless he has one of those games where he's hot from three, and statistically that hasn't come all that often in the playoffs, I think he's a pretty safe bet to go under.
Well, there you have it, folks. Our analysts breaking down the crazy 8 for 8. All you need to do is scroll down there, select your buy-in and your amount, and then punch submit, and you're in to win 125 times. That means $20 pays $2,500. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Monkey Knife Fight Live. Folks, I'm Conner Rowntree for Noor Zainab and Nick Whalen. Remember to hit it hard.